So today we're talking about prophecy and the future with pastor and teacher Jay McCarl. Jay, thank you for joining me and coming back again.
Oh, it's always great. It's an honor, and thanks for inviting me back.
What message would you want someone to know about, finding hope and clarity in scripture?
About one third of the Bible is prophecy, and a good portion of that is what's going to happen at the end of the world, as C.S. Lewis would just put it very plainly. We spiritualize the prophecies that are given by Jesus, by John in the book of Revelation, some by Paul. Of course, the Old Testament prophets that talking about the end times and all of that. But we spiritualize them. And that's, yeah, it's okay, but understand that they're speaking in terms that actually make the concepts or the history, the future history, because it's the history of the future, it makes it easy to see, oh, that's what's going to happen. Again, John is bringing out in the book of Revelation in particular, the future in simple terms that the people who are actually they're handed the scroll, came from Patmos on a boat, and somebody picks it up at the port, takes it to a home fellowship. They open it up. The ink is still wet on the scroll, so to speak, and they can understand every word of it. So, understanding their relationship to their world opens this thing up. And once again, it simplifies the message. And
Mhm.
suddenly you realize that, this is really understandable. But the second thing that we do, and this is really important, and this is one of the reasons why Decoding the Future got made. Brent, who was the producer, director, and the owner of the film company, Ingenuity Films, he knows that when I teach the book of Revelation, I rarely, if ever, do this is that. Now, back in the 70s or late 60s, a really good man named Hal Lindsey came along. And he said, I got some ideas about the Bible, about end times prophecy, the book of Revelation, about some of the things going on in the book of Revelation. Could it be that, for instance, this object, whatever it's talking about, is like a tank or a helicopter, or this is like a nuclear weapon or whatever? And he speculates on this. And it's fun to talk about things like that. But unfortunately, like most people who are disciples of very innovative or great people, they take the message and they run with it a lot further than it was ever meant to go. A lot of people will speculate, for instance, out of the book of Revelation, which is like one of the big topics in the book, is the mark of the beast. First of all, that indicates there's going to be a one world economy. And then it indicates that there's going to be possibly a subdermal microchip or some sort of a tattoo or whatever. And that's going to be your mark of the beast and all of that. And they say we're moving in that direction, and then people start following the innovations of computers and microchips and all of these things, and things related in that direction, as I could go on and on about. However, the people that John was writing to, when he gets into Revelation 13 and he starts talking about the mark of the beast, they don't understand any of that. Well, we do, and we can say, well, it's written for us because we're towards the end times. And I could agree with that. That's, there's not a problem there. And when it came down to the mark of the beast, they understood they had a system in place in those days that was going to resembled something that was going to happen in the future. And it was called Caesar worship. And the Ephesians and the people in Pergamum especially knew, Smyrna, well, Pergamum too, all of the churches, but those three especially, that are written to at the beginning of the book of Revelation, understood Caesar worship. And if you worship Caesar once a year, you had to say Caesar is Lord and burn a pinch of incense to Caesar, and then you were off the hook. If you didn't do that, then you were considered sacrilegious to the gods because he was among the gods. And if anything bad, a fire, a flood, a famine, a war, an invasion, plague came through the village or the city, it was blamed on you because you didn't worship the God properly. So you had to do this. But if you didn't do it, then they'd get really mad at you. And for instance, going into the marketplace at Ephesus, which is fascinating, there are these monumental arches just to the right of the Library of Celsus, which is the big building you see. If you ever see advertisements for tourism in Turkey, you're going to see this building. It's just an absolutely gorgeous facade. The rest of the building's gone, but the facade's still standing. To the right it looks like a triumphal arch off to the right. It goes into the agora or the marketplace. And there are niches in the walls in this big fat arch on both sides where they had statues in there of gods and what have you, including of Caesar. And this is just one example of gazillions where you would walk through these arches, and the marketplace is a contained area in order to contain thieves and keep theft down. Um, and people would go in, they would sell their wares in there. People were going to buy like a big shopping mall. But on the right or the left hand side, as you came in, you had these statues, and you got a bored priest sitting there who has keeps a charcoal fire hot, has a bowl of incense, just dried incense. And as you walk through, you'd grab a little pinch of incense and you'd throw it on the fire. And of course, the incense would smoke the place up, and the priest would bless you as you walk by. And if you didn't do it, the priest would stop you and come back because you're burning that pinch of incense to Caesar. And what you're supposed to do, then take the pinch of incense, throw it on the fire, and tell the priest, may the luck of Caesar be with you. You bless the priest. If you didn't do that, he got up and he followed you, said, you forgot something, come back and do it again. And so
Wow.
Christian isn't going to do that. And if the Christian says, no, I can't, I worship only the Lord and that's it, he goes in and the priest is going to follow and make a huge, noisy, nasty fuss behind him. This man won't worship the gods. This man won't worship Caesar. And he's going into the agora, the person, the Christian, to either buy something or sell something. He's either a merchant or he's a customer. So what's going to happen here? Well, nobody's going to buy from him. Nobody's going to sell to him because he's sacrilegious. So the mark of the beast, whatever it ends up being, and it will be something, but the point is not whether it's a subdermal microchip or I've even heard some people say it's the vaccine. It's like, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. But the point is, it comes with the mandate to worship, in this case, the Antichrist. And when John says about the mark of the beast and all of this sort of thing, people understood it because, especially in Ephesus, man, it was a big deal. In Smyrna, it could get you killed. I mean, over in Pergamum, Jesus mentions my faithful witness Antipas. He was roasted in a bronze bowl because he wouldn't worship Caesar. It was terrible what happened to these guys. So there's references to this throughout portions of the book of Revelation. It's quite amazing. So I don't do this is that. Take the text at what it means, go back and find out what they thought about it, how they related to the subject matter, they being the original readers. When the scroll is open, the ink is still wet, they read it, they go, I get this, I understand. Find out what that is, and you find out what God's priority is in those portions of the letter, and it's absolutely crystal clear.
That's amazing. Now, so what I'm getting from you is that a lot of the things that John was saying, especially when it came down to the churches, what Jesus was speaking to John about, had a lot to do with what they were going through at the time. Because if you're somebody like maybe me who just studied Revelation, I'm thinking of it being like today, right? Like relating the churches to what's happening today, but everything is relating to what they were doing back then. So now my big question is, when Jesus was talking about the churches, what was happening right there? And was he like he was pointing them out for their Caesar worship? Is what I'm hearing you say?
Well, that was part of it. I mean, it just depended on what they were going through. Each church was experiencing something very different. Ephesus was doing well. They were functioning well as a church. Every one of the seven churches was being persecuted to one degree or another. The most severely tested church was Smyrna because they wouldn't budge. They weren't going to worship Caesar, and Smyrna was the capital of Caesar worship at the time the book of Revelation was written. I happen to believe very firmly and for very, very empirical reasons that the book of Revelation was written late, sometime around 90, 92, 93 AD. There's a lot of controversy about that, but there's internal evidence in the book of Revelation, which is pretty long explanation, so I'll save that for later perhaps, but that it was written late. So the temple had already fallen. The Jews had already been scattered. There was really not a whole lot going on in Israel except Roman stuff because, of course, the Roman destruction in 70 AD there and all of that. But so it related to the things that Jesus said are to the churches. are related to things that the churches were going through at that time, what the church would be going through in the distant future, and the things that they would experience actually in between, because the symptoms of what the seven churches exhibited that Jesus specifically addressed were symptomatic of, we say, well, they're eras of the church. They could be. I don't really buy into that much, but it's possible. Again, I certainly wouldn't discount it. But
Mhm.
each church had its own issue, and every church out there is going to be facing these issues, especially if they're Gentile churches, which the
Mm.
church had by that time had gone almost completely Gentile. There was the division between Judaism, and when I say Judaism, I'm talking about Christian Jews, saved Jews, like Messianic Jews, like Paul and people like that. John,
Mm.
one for sure. Um, and when the gospel went to the Gentiles, they were beginning to receive it with their logic and with their understanding. And they're
Mhm.
not going to get some of the stuff that came out of the Old Testament, uh,
Mhm.
that Jesus is constantly referring back to in the book of Revelation. So he's bringing it up saying, like Ephesus, you're doing good, but you've left your first love. Uh, Pergamum, you're blowing it. Satan has his throne there, but don't give into this stuff. Smyrna, hang in there. It's bad for you and it's going to get worse, but stay the course.
Mhm.
So I'm just skipping around here, but Sardis, hey, you're dead. You're asleep. You're comatose. There's a few faithful there, but they're only faithful there because they got no churches to switch to. Somebody gets
Mhm.
mad at a church and doesn't like it, they just go to another church. Nowadays, in those days, you didn't have that option. You didn't have that luxury. You couldn't do it. So wake up, or you're going to be taken like you were before historically. There's a great story behind that the people in Sardis would have known.
Mhm.
Philadelphia, we look at that as a very spiritualized, esoteric thing of evangelism. Put an open door before you, keep evangelizing. That is a true, absolutely true teaching of Jesus to his disciples, to us in the Bible by Paul and everybody else as the Holy Spirit inspired them. But in that context in Philadelphia, it's a whole different thing going on in there for these Philadelphians. They were under great duress from Judaizers. So that's different. And then, of course, you have the church at Laodicea, who is just, shall we say, entitled. And their entitlements made them very demanding, made them very snooty, and the Lord took them down a few notches on that one.
But like, how do you see, this coming all, coming together right now?
People that are very interested in the book of Revelation and end time prophecy, mainly because of people like Hal Lindsey, and I'm not blaming him. To his credit, he brings these up for discussion. And I know he just went to be with the Lord recently. The one world economy. There has to be, a global economy. He suggests that. A lot of people now have taken that ball and run with it and says, well, there's got to be a global economy. And they look at the news, and I hear people doing prophecy updates, how we're moving closer and closer to that, and they bring up more news stories, and we're there. I have news for you. We're already in a global economy. And the proof is this thing that we're talking on right now. The internet is the new Babel. It can translate any language. Now we can understand each other. You commute. I mean, going to a bank is now like archaic. Writing a check, what's that? Who does it?
Mm.
I was in Guatemala about 12 years ago. I think it was about 12 years ago. I was speaking at a Bible college down there, with the church affiliate of ours down in Antigua, and we had gone off to a lake called Lake Atitlan, which is a huge crater lake down there, very beautiful place. We got into a launch and went across the lake to a village. There are several villages lining the lake. It's a Mayan village. It looks like a typical Latin American village in a place like Guatemala, but it's full of Mayans, native Mayans. And you go into the village, and there was like a consortium of weavers there, women who were widows who had organized and decided they're going to make weavings, hand weavings, out of natural dyes and natural, alpaca and whatever they have, wools and that thing. They would sell these things to the tourists. So I'm in this place. There's no electricity in it. It's concrete walls over cinder block. There's a little cement on it. and they have all these beautiful weavings in there. And here are the women dressed in their native dress and all of that. And I have people with me, and some can translate. And I saw this table runner hanging on the wall, and it was gorgeous. And I thought, I need to bring a gift home for my wife because she's not here, and I got to make sure she's happy that I'm gone. So I'm going to bring this home. And so I picked it. I pointed it to the wall. I'm talking through an interpreter to this Mayan woman, and I said, "How much?" And she said, $20. It's like no bargaining. I'm buying it right now. $20? Are you kidding me? For a hand woven thing of that beauty? And so she takes it off the wall, and we go over to a ramshackle desk. She sits down behind the desk, and then through the interpreter, she says, "How would you like to pay for this?" What? I said, "Do you take credit cards?" And she puts out her hand. And I put my credit card in her hand, and she reaches under the desk and pulls out this box that looks like it was, I don't know, like a black box from an airplane type of a thing. It's this little armored box, and she pulls up a little antenna. It's a satellite antenna, and she zips the card through it. And then a little thing comes out, sign this, I sign it, and then she's done. She gives it to me. She puts it back under the desk. In a Mayan village in Guatemala on the backside of Lake Atitlan. We're in a global economy. You can do this anywhere in the world. So if people are waiting for that to happen, I got news for you. You've been sitting in it for a long time. You're waiting
Mm.
for this new knowledge where knowledge is going to increase and exponentially and all of that. It's been going on for a long time. And the internet, the fact that we have this here is crazy. AI, man, that thing is either the greatest tool or the greatest tool of hell.
Oh yeah.
Could be both because it's just a tool. But man, it's like talk about the increase of knowledge in the last days. Uh,
Yeah.
it's nuts. So there's so much in there that points to these things. And anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but there it is.
But yeah, no, we're seeing things starting to happen now then that bring us closer to the end time, and we're also seeing where Israel is fighting Iran, and we know that all of this is just part of this of this plan that God has, and so. With decoding the future, what is something that the audience should know mostly about?
Decoding the Future is it's a class. It was originally 36 hours over a period of time of me teaching at McGeorge School of Law. We just rented out one of the halls there, and there's a small audience there, and I'm talking basically like a lecturer. But as I'm teaching it from the perspective of John is being that simple fisherman. And Jesus has spoken to him, and he's telling John, keep it simple. Keep it simple. This is my message. I want them to understand it. He writes it down. So now here's the audience, and I'm telling the audience there, this is what you would understand when you heard these things said to you. So, in other words, we're taking the message and giving it to the people, the audience, the people who are watching it on video, the way that perhaps the Ephesians or the Pergamese or the people in Philadelphia would have understood it, and that simplifies the message hugely. The
Mhm.
technique that I use in the thing was I will read a portion of the chapter because you can't the whole thing. I mean, you're reading through the whole book of Revelation to take a long time, and I love to go verse by verse. I can't do it under these circumstances. So we read a portion of the chapter. I summarize the rest of the chapter, and then I put it in terms that even a non-believer could understand, even though the book of Revelation specifically says it wasn't written to non-believers. It was written to believers right there in verse 2 of chapter 1. So that's the way it's written. It's written so that you can understand what they understood.